All right, so someone's given us this PDF, Strand 3.1 market structures,
hmm
and they want the need to know stuff like how do markets actually work, and why should anyone care?
Yeah, it's like it's about having that cheat sheet so you can figure out how businesses make decisions, how they set prices, how all of that ends up affecting you, the consumer.
Right. Okay. So this PDF starts off. They've got this image, a market spectrum, kind of like visualize it like a ruler. And on one end, you've got perfect competition, and way over on the other end, there's pure monopoly.
Right, exactly. And all along that rule, you've got other structures too, like monopolistic competition and oligopoly are in there. Each spot on that spectrum, it shows you a different level of competition.
Yeah.
It's like, how much power do these companies actually have?
Okay, so let's start with perfect competition. This is where companies, like theoretically at least, they have the least power, right? What's that look like in real life?
Okay, so imagine you're at a farmer's market, like tons of stalls, and they're all selling the same stuff, the same produce. No single farmer can just decide to jack up the price, right? Because if they do, you as the customer, you just walk over to the next stall. Easy.
Makes sense. So they're all, what's that term the PDF used?
Yeah,
Price takers.
exactly, price takers. But see, there's a downside to this whole everything's the same thing, too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, okay, you get the lowest price possible, but then where's the variety?
Exactly. You hit it right on the head. Lowest possible price, but zero product differentiation. Every apple is, well, it's just an apple. No fancy labels, no heirloom, this or that. Just apples competing on price.
All right, so maybe not the most exciting market if you're looking for something unique. Okay, so let's jump to the other side of that spectrum then, monopoly. Now I'm thinking about that board game and those cutthroat takeovers.
Well, monopolies in real life, they're usually not that dramatic. But the main idea is the same. One company, and they control a whole market. Think utility companies. Like your electricity, you probably only have one choice, right?
Yeah, that's true. No competition. So they get to be the price makers. And I bet that could be pretty profitable.
Oh, yeah, definitely can be. This PDF, it even gives an example. Rapeseed production. Back in 2008-09, prices got so high it was like a gold rush. Farmers, they all jumped in trying to get a piece. Almost perfect competition for a little while. But then, of course, the bubble burst, prices crashed, and a lot of those farmers, well, they got hit hard.
Oof, yeah, that's rough. So I guess that shows even when it seems like a free market, someone always loses out. So monopolies then. This PDF talks about how they can pop up different ways. There's laws, mergers, controlling resources, or just one company gets so big no one else can compete, like a tech company maybe, with some crazy new invention.
Exactly. And because, monopolies have all this potential to use their power, maybe not in the best way, governments usually have to get involved, try to keep things fair.
Okay, yeah, regulation. So what does this PDF say about how the Irish government handles monopolies?
Well, there are a few laws, big ones. First, they have this Restrictive Practices Act from way back in 1972. Basically, it gives the government the power to say nope if a company's trying to, squash the competition.
So like some shady stuff to get rid of their rivals. The government can step in and say, not so fast.
And that's the idea, yeah. And then there are the Mergers and Takeovers Acts. These try to stop mergers that would give one company way too much power. Imagine if, like, Ryanair and Aer Lingus merged. Basically a monopoly on air travel in Ireland, right? The government would probably step in and say that can't happen.
Makes sense. So they're trying to protect consumers, make sure there's, at least some competition out there. What else is there?
Well, then there's the Competition Act of 1991. This gives the government even more power. If they think something fishy is going on in a market, they can get involved. It's all about making sure companies play fair and that consumers aren't getting ripped off.
Right. Okay. But even with all these rules, it's got to be tricky. Trying to protect consumers, but also not like hold back innovation.
Oh, absolutely. It's tough finding that balance. And all this, it gets even more complicated when you start thinking about how these different market structures, how they affect the people working in them, not just the consumers.
Okay. Yeah. Good point. So let's say you're looking for a job.
hmm
Would you rather work for a company in one of these perfectly competitive markets, or would you rather work for a big monopoly? What are the pros and cons there?
Well, if it's perfect competition, the good thing is you've got options. Lots of companies all need workers, right? So you might even be able to, negotiate a better salary. They have to compete for talent.
Yeah, true. But wouldn't job security be uh, a little bit shaky? I feel like in those really competitive markets, companies could like go under more easily if they can't keep up.
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about. Monopolies, though, they tend to be more stable, especially if they're big and they've been around for a while, right? So you might have more long-term security, even if you don't have as much leverage when you're first starting out.
And they're probably making tons of money, monopolies, so maybe they have better pay and benefits overall.
Could be. You might also have more chances to, like, move up in the company. Monopolies, they're usually bigger, more complicated structures, more room to grow.
Okay, so it's like trade-offs on both sides. What about from the consumer's perspective? Are we usually better off with perfect competition or with monopolies?
It's not a simple answer. With perfect competition, you're probably going to see lower prices because businesses, they're always trying to undercut each other.
Right, right, fighting for your business. But monopolies, sometimes they can offer lower prices too, right, because of their size. This PDF mentions economies of scale.
That's it. If a company's producing stuff on a huge scale, they can often make each unit cheaper, you see. So that could mean lower prices for consumers.
Okay, but with monopolies, you don't get much choice.
Right.
One company, they control the whole market.
Right.
You're stuck with what they offer.
That's the big downside. Yeah, no choice. And that means the company could take advantage, maybe charge higher prices, or the quality might not be so good.
It's funny, this PDF, it talks about a car company that sells the same car for way cheaper in India than in Europe. It seems like they're trying to figure out how much each region will pay and then charge them that, basically.
Oh, yeah. Classic example of price discrimination. It's when a company charges different prices for the same thing, depending on who's buying it.
So it's not just supply and demand. It's more about figuring out which customer groups will pay more, right?
You got it. In this PDF, it actually breaks down price discrimination into 3 types: first degree, second degree, and third degree.
Okay, let's hear it. Break it down. What's first degree?
All right, so imagine a solicitor who knows exactly how much each client can pay, and they charge each one a different price, the absolute max they're willing to give. That's first degree.
So it's like super personalized pricing, kind of like haggling in a market somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. But realistically, companies can't always get that much info on each customer, so that's where second degree price discrimination comes in.
Right, so what's that one then?
Second degree, it's about offering different prices depending on how much you buy or how much you use something, like bulk discounts, think of those, or loyalty programs, or even those buy one, get one free deals at the grocery store.
Right, so they're trying to get you to buy more stuff.
Exactly. And then we've got third degree price discrimination, which is probably the most common type. This is where they divide customers into groups and charge different prices based on who's in that group.
Okay, so like student discounts, senior citizen discounts.
You got it. Or, you know how movie theaters charge less for matinee showings? Same movie, but different price depending on the time.
So they're targeting people who are, I guess, more sensitive to the price?
Right. Students and seniors, they might not have as much money, so those lower prices, they make things more affordable.
But this brings up an interesting question. Is all this price discrimination, is it always a bad thing?
That's tough to say. I mean, it can feel unfair to pay more than someone else just because you can afford to pay more.
Right, like you're being punished for having a good job or whatever.
Exactly. But then again, think about those student discounts. If companies didn't do that, some students wouldn't be able to afford things at all, right?
Okay, so it's kind of two sides to that coin.
Uh,
All right, we've covered perfect competition, monopolies, and even that in-between one, monopolistic competition.
mhm.
What else is on our tour of market structures here?
Let's talk about oligopolies. This is where you have a few really big companies. They control most of the market. Like, think of cars, airlines, or even those tech giants we were talking about.
Okay, so a few powerful players. That's got to be pretty intense competition, I'd imagine.
It is, but it's a different kind of competition.
Yeah.
Oligopolies, they're all about, what's the word? Interdependence. What one company does, it affects all the others.
So, it's a high-stakes game. Everyone's watching everyone else's moves really carefully.
Exactly. And that leads to something economists call price rigidity. Basically, companies are afraid to change their prices because they don't know how the others will react.
Right. If one company lowers prices, the others have to follow suit, or they lose customers, but then they all end up making less money.
Exactly. And the same thing happens in reverse. If one company raises prices, the others might not follow, and then that company loses out.
So they're stuck.
This PDF, it uses this great term, sticky prices. Prices, they kind of stay put, even when costs change, because no one in the oligopoly wants to rock the boat.
They even have a diagram to show this, right? Something about a kinked demand curve.
Yeah. It's like, picture a graph and the demand curve. It has this bend in it, a kink. That kink, it shows you the point where if a company raises prices, they'll probably lose customers. But if they lower prices, everyone else will match them, and no one really wins.
Okay, so it's a visual way of showing that sticky price.
Right. And all of this, it definitely affects consumers. It might mean that prices don't go down as much as we want, even when things get cheaper to make.
I guess the good thing is at least prices aren't changing all the time.
Mm,
Makes it easier to, pudge it.
true. But the PDF, it also points out that oligopolies, they can be, well, tempting for companies to do something called collusion.
Collusion. That's like when companies, they secretly get together and agree to fix prices or divide up the market, right?
You got it. It's illegal, but it can be tempting for them because, well, if they work together instead of competing, they can all make more money.
And that obviously hurts consumers, fewer choices, higher prices.
Exactly. This PDF even mentions the OPEC quota system back in the 1970s. Oil-producing countries, they basically got together and agreed to limit how much oil they produced. That way, they could keep the prices high.
See, oligopolies can be shady.
They can be, but it's not always bad news. Sometimes oligopolies can actually lead to more innovation, new technology and stuff. Think about smartphones. A few big companies control most of the market, but they're always trying to outdo each other. New features, better performance.
So even though there's not that many companies, the competition still pushes things forward.
Right, and that's an important takeaway about all this. Market structures, they're complicated. It's not always good or bad. It depends.
Okay, starting to see the bigger picture now. But what about those models they talk about in this PDF, the Sweezy model and Baumel's model? Where do those fit in? They sound kind of, textbooky.
Yeah, a little bit. But they help to explain, how companies in these oligopolies actually make decisions.
Okay, so the Sweezy model first. What's the main idea there?
Basically, it shows why prices are so sticky, remember? It all comes down to companies being scared of what the others will do.
Right, right. So if one company tries to drop their prices, the others will just match them. Everyone loses.
Exactly. And if one company tries to raise prices, well, the others might not, and then that company loses customers.
So no one wants to make a move.
It's a tough spot to be in. Now, Baumol's model, that one's interesting. It says companies, they don't always try to maximize profits.
Wait, seriously, why wouldn't a company want to, make as much money as possible?
Sometimes there are other things that are important too, like maybe they want to maximize revenue instead. Or maybe just sell as many units as possible. Maybe they're trying to, take over a bigger share of the market, even if it means less profit in the short term.
So they're thinking long-term, big picture, not just today's profits.
Exactly. This PDF, it even has an example. It talks about this firm. They could make the most profit if they produce, let's say, 10,000 units, sell them at a high price. But instead, they decide to make 12,000 units and sell them a little cheaper.
So they're choosing to sell more, but at a lower price.
Yeah, because they have a different goal. Maybe they want more customers, or maybe they want to make it hard for new companies to compete. Or maybe they just want everyone to know their brand name.
Okay, so there's a lot more to it than just profits, profits, profits.
Absolutely. And that leads us to another big idea from this PDF, market concentration.
Okay. What's that all about, and why should we care?
So market concentration, it's basically how much of a market is controlled by just a few companies. It tells you how much competition there really is.
So high concentration, that would be like those oligopolies we were talking about.
Right. And there are ways to measure this. There's the four-firm concentration ratio and the Herfindahl-Hirschman index, HHI for short.
All right. Without getting too into the weeds with math, what do those numbers tell us?
They give you a quick picture of how competitive a market is. High concentration, not much competition. Lower concentration, more companies fighting for your business.
And why should we, regular people, care about that?
Because it affects you directly. More concentration usually means higher prices. Maybe the quality isn't as good. And it can even stifle innovation. If a few companies control everything, they don't have to try as hard.
So we need to, keep an eye on market concentration, make sure companies aren't getting too powerful, basically.
Exactly. And that's where these regulatory bodies come in. The PDF talks about the CRU, the CCPC, and the ECN.
Okay, remind me, what are those and what do they actually do?
So the CRU, that's the Commission for Regulation of Utilities. They watch over the energy markets, make sure everything's fair when it comes to pricing, making sure people can actually get the service.
They're the ones looking out for us on our electricity bills.
Yep. Then there's the CCPC, Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. They investigate companies that might be doing things that are anti-competitive, like price fixing or trying to create a monopoly.
So they step in when companies are trying to be sneaky and rig the system.
Right. And then there's the ECN, the European Competition Network. They make sure all the competition rules are being applied the same way across the whole European Union.
Okay, so it's like a whole network of people making sure companies play by the rules and that consumers are protected.
Exactly. They're really important for keeping things fair and making sure markets work the way they're supposed to.
This has been a great deep dive. Learned a lot about, how these different markets work and how they affect us every day.
Me too. It's really interesting stuff, seeing those textbook theories actually playing out in the real world.
And thanks for breaking it all down so clearly. Made it easy to follow.
Glad to hear it. That's what we're here for.
Before we go, this PDF ends with a really interesting question. It asks, with all this online shopping and global markets, how do you think these traditional market structures, how will they change? What new problems or maybe new opportunities will come up for both consumers and businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the internet is changing everything so fast.
Mhm.
Who knows what will happen to market structures in the future?
It's definitely a lot to think about. Well, thanks again for joining us on this deep dive into the world of market structures. See you next time for another one.